Billionaire CEO panics without a French translator. Then froze when the black maid started speaking. What if the person you belittled was the one who held the key to your biggest success? The city skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Charles Parker's Manhattan penthouse, a monument to his empire. At 42, Charles was the archetype of success, a self-made billionaire, CEO of Parker Global, with a reputation for ruthless precision. His tailored suits and sharp jawline commanded boardrooms, but his cold, calculating gaze kept everyone at a distance. To him, people were tools, assets to leverage or liabilities to discard. And Jasmine Carter, his maid of 4 years, was firmly in the latter category. Jasmine, 31, moved through the penthouse with practiced invisibility. Her dark skin blended into the shadows of her role, her presence reduced to the soft swish of her cleaning cloth and the faint scent of lemon polish. Born to a Haitian mother and a Jamaican father in a working-class Brooklyn neighborhood, she'd grown up navigating two worlds, one of vibrant family gatherings filled with French patois and reggae beats, the other of a society that dismissed her as less than. Her fluency in French, a gift from her mother's heritage, was a quiet pride she carried, though it had never opened doors in a world that saw her only as the help. Charles barely registered her existence. To him, Jasmine was a fixture, like the marble countertops or the crystal chandelier she dusted daily. He didn't know her last name, her story, or the dreams she'd tucked away to afford life in New York. She was just the black maid who kept his world spotless. If he passed her in the hallway, his eyes slid over her, his mind already on the next deal. But Jasmine saw everything, the late-night calls, the stress etched into his face, the way he dismissed anyone who didn't serve his immediate needs. She'd overheard enough to know his empire was teetering, stock prices dipping, investors restless, and a crucial merger with a French conglomerate, Du Bois Enterprises, looming like a lifeline. Jasmine's days were a grind of monotony and microaggressions. Charles's guests, other CEOs, socialites, power players, treated her like furniture. "Girl, can you fetch me a drink?" one had said at a cocktail party, not even looking up. Another had left a crumpled 20 on the counter, as if tipping a dog for a trick. Jasmine swallowed the indignities, her mother's words echoing, "Ting's hard, but you keep your head high, Jasmine. You're more than they see." She clung to that, even as Charles's curt, "Clean this up," or "Don't touch that," chipped away at her spirit. But Jasmine wasn't just resilient, she was sharp. She'd graduated high school with honors, her teachers praising her knack for languages and her quick wit. College had been the plan, but life had other ideas. Her mother's illness, mounting bills, and a city that didn't care about her dreams. Cleaning houses paid the rent, and Charles's penthouse, though dehumanizing, was steady work. She told herself it was temporary, a means to an end, but 4 years in, the end felt farther away than ever. The morning of the merger meeting dawned with a storm brewing over Manhattan. Rain streaked the penthouse windows as Jasmine polished the mahogany conference table in Charles's home office. The air buzzed with tension. Charles paced, barking into his phone. "What do you mean, she's not coming? Find someone else, now." His voice cracked, a rare break in his polished facade. Jasmine kept her head down, but her ears caught every word. The French translator, a woman named Claire, had cancelled due to a family emergency. The agency had no one else fluent in French and business jargon on such short notice. The meeting with Du Bois Enterprises was in 3 hours. Charles slammed his phone down, his face pale. "This can't be happening," he muttered, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The merger was his last chance to stabilize Parker Global. Du Bois Enterprises, led by the formidable Elise Du Bois, held the key to new markets and billions in revenue. Without a translator, Charles's rudimentary French, high school lessons long forgotten, wouldn't cut it. Elise was known for her impatience with incompetence, and a misstep could tank the deal. Jasmine, wiping down a bookshelf, overheard the panic. She hesitated, her cloth pausing mid-swipe. She'd translated for her mother's community center years ago, navigating complex conversations with Haitian immigrants and French-speaking donors. She knew the nuances of French business etiquette, the subtle cues that could make or break a deal. But offering to help Charles? The man who barely acknowledged her existence? The risk was enormous. If she failed, she'd be humiliated, or worse, fired. But if she stayed silent, the moment would pass, and she'd remain invisible. She took a deep breath, her mother's voice in her head. "Speak up, Jasmine. Your voice matters." She set down her cloth and stepped forward. "Mr. Parker," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I can help. I speak French." Charles spun around, his eyes narrowing. "What?" His tone was sharp, disbelieving. You're a maid." Jasmine's jaw tightened, but she held his gaze. "I'm fluent in French. Grew up speaking it. I can translate for your meeting." The room fell silent. Charles's assistant, Mark, a wiry man with a perpetual frown, snorted. "This is a billion-dollar deal, not a community college project. We need a professional." Jasmine didn't flinch. "I've translated for organizations before. I know business French, and I know how to handle high-stakes conversations." Charles stared at her, his mind racing. Trusting his maid, a black woman he'd never seen as anything but background noise, was unthinkable. His pride recoiled at the idea. But the clock was ticking, and Elise Dubois was already en route. He had no one else. "Fine," he snapped, his voice tight. "But if you screw this up, you're out." "Understood." Jasmine nodded, her heart pounding. She'd just stepped into the lion's den. The conference room was a sleek battlefield, polished wood, leather chairs, and a view of the city that screamed power. Elise Dubois, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a tailored blazer and a no-nonsense demeanor, sat across from Charles. Her team, 2 executives and a lawyer, flanked her, their expressions unreadable. Jasmine stood at the edge of the room, dressed in her usual black uniform, feeling like an imposter. Charles hadn't even offered her a seat. The meeting began haltingly. Charles stumbled through his opening in English, relying on Jasmine to translate. She stepped forward, her voice clear and confident, rendering his words into flawless French. Elise raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised, but said nothing. As the discussion deepened, talk of market shares, synergies, and regulatory hurdles, Jasmine's translations grew more nuanced. She didn't just parrot Charles's words, she clarified his intent, softening his bluntness with diplomatic phrasing that resonated with Elise's cultural expectations. When Elise fired off a rapid question about Parker Global's supply chain vulnerabilities, Charles froze, his French failing him. Jasmine stepped in seamlessly, answering in French with a precision that stunned the room. "What Mr. Parker means is that our supply chain is diversified across 3 continents, reducing risk exposure. We've also implemented predictive analytics to anticipate disruptions." She glanced at Charles, who nodded, dumbfounded. Elise leaned forward, intrigued. "And how do you address labor compliance in your Asian markets?" she asked, her eyes on Jasmine, not Charles. Jasmine didn't hesitate. "Parker Global adheres to international labor standards, with regular audits to ensure compliance. We've also invested in upskilling programs to support local workforces." Her response, drawn from overheard conversations and her own research, was spot on. Elise nodded, impressed. As the meeting progressed, the dynamic shifted. Elise began directing her questions to Jasmine, who handled them with poise, weaving in cultural insights that eased tensions. When Elise mentioned a French holiday impacting production schedules, Jasmine referenced it effortlessly, earning a rare smile from the older woman. Charles, sidelined, watched in stunned silence as his maid, commanded the room. The negotiations hit a snag over intellectual property rights. Elise's lawyer, a stern man named Pierre, argued for stricter terms. Charles, frustrated, snapped in English, "This is ridiculous. They're trying to gut us." Jasmine translated his words into a diplomatic suggestion, framing it as a request for mutual benefit. Pierre softened, and the discussion moved forward. By the end, Elise extended her hand to Charles. "We have a deal," she said in French, her tone warm. Jasmine translated, her voice steady but her heart racing. The merger was secured, a $4 billion lifeline for Parker Global. The room erupted in polite applause, but Elisa's eyes lingered on Jasmine. "You have an exceptional translator," she said. "She made this possible." Charles forced a smile, his mind reeling. Jasmine, the black maid he'd dismissed for years, had just saved his company. After the meeting, the penthouse felt different. The Du Bois team left, and Mark scurried off to draft contracts. Charles and Jasmine were alone in the conference room, the city's lights twinkling below. Jasmine gathered her cleaning supplies, preparing to fade back into the background, but Charles stopped her. "Jasmine," he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. How did you do that?" She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I told you I could help. You didn't believe me." Charles flinched, her words cutting deeper than he expected. For years, he'd seen her as a shadow, a servant. Now, he saw her intelligence, her grace under pressure, her undeniable talent. His biases, his assumption that a black maid couldn't possibly outshine him, had nearly cost him everything. "I was wrong," he admitted, the words foreign on his tongue. "You were incredible." Jasmine didn't smile. "I've always been capable, Mr. Parker. You just never looked." Her words hung in the air, a quiet indictment. Charles swallowed, grappling with the weight of his prejudice. He'd built an empire on his ability to read people, yet he'd misjudged the woman who'd been under his nose for years. "I want you to take a new role," he said suddenly. "Corporate communications. You'd be perfect." Jasmine studied him, wary. The offer was tempting. Better pay, respect, a chance to use her skills. But it came with strings. Could she trust a man who'd only seen her worth when it served him? "I'll think about it," she said, her voice firm. "But I'm not here to fix your mistakes forever." Charles nodded, chastened. For the first time, he saw her not as a maid, but as Jasmine Carter, a woman with dreams, talent, and a strength he'd never understood. Days later, Jasmine stood in her small Brooklyn apartment, staring at a letter from Charles. It outlined a formal job offer, a six-figure salary, a title, and a chance to work on global deals. She set it down, her mind racing. The merger had changed everything. Word had spread, colleagues whispered about the maid who'd saved the day, and Elise Du Bois had personally requested Jasmine for future negotiations. But Jasmine's victory wasn't just the job offer. It was the moment she'd stepped out of the shadows, her voice ringing clear in a room that had tried to silence her. She'd proven her worth, not to Charles, but to herself. The world had always underestimated her, her race, her job, her background, but she'd never let it define her. She picked up the letter, a small smile breaking through. She'd negotiate the terms on her own turf, ensuring her value was recognized. Charles, too, was changing. He'd started greeting her by name, asking about her ideas, even apologizing to Mark for his temper. His biases weren't gone, but the cracks in his worldview were widening, and Jasmine's light had shone through. As she looked out her window at the city she loved, Jasmine felt a quiet power settle within her. She wasn't invisible anymore. And she never would be again. The merger's success made headlines, but Jasmine's role remained a quiet legend within Parker Global. She accepted the new position, but on her terms, a mentorship program for underrepresented employees and a commitment to diversity in hiring. Charles, humbled, agreed. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was evolving, a testament to growth, resilience, and the power of seeing people for who they truly are. Jasmine's story rippled outward. Young women in her community reached out, inspired by her courage. She began mentoring, sharing her mother's wisdom, "You're more than they see." And in the penthouse, Charles kept a photo of the merger signing on his desk, a reminder of the day his world changed, not just because of a deal, but because of a woman he'd finally learned to see.